Welcome to the Wise Dome podcast, a series that is so much more than just a podcast series. This is a movement towards a lifestyle you know you deserve. It's all about the ease of inspiring and sharing your knowledge and experiences online. I'm your host, Nikki, and I have always admired those who share their wisdom, those who have decided to inspire others. Just like my guests, I found my version of inspiring others by sharing my wisdom and created a lifestyle I wanted, and I'm going to share all the secrets for how you can too. On this show, you'll find inspiration, motivation, and advice from experts, as well as valuable tips on how to get started or improve your business. Let's dive into how you can begin and grow your wisdom business. Remember, inspiring others looks different for everyone. How will you inspire? Hi there, and welcome to the Wise Dome podcast. And today is a podcast just from me, just a solo podcast message. And it's all mainly about how we react to situations. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because last week was an amazing week for me. It was full of surprises for me personally and in business. And that's something I'm sure we can all relate to when you're living a daily life of routines, you have appointments, meetings, drop-offs, pickups, etc. to do. And then bam, someone rear-ends your car and well, there goes all the plans that you've had in state. So here's what I want to talk about briefly on how we react to when these spanners get catapulted into the air, so to speak. And to put this into context, last Wednesday, I was going about my business, dropping off the eldest at school, and then I was on my way to drop off the youngest at daycare. And then a lady behind me, possibly doing the same thing really, just had a moment, and well, we met in circumstances where they were not great. And there was, of course, a moment, of emotional reaction where I went into protection mode, as every parent does when a child's involved in the car, and I checked on him and everything, he was fine. And however, after I checked the bubs and everything and I knew all was okay, I sort of had to place my emotions on hold. And it was sort of like I had to go into a different headspace. And I knew that my feelings would then come into play after emotions. And just to explain this, I wanted to address today that, many of us come across things that, can throw spanner into the works with business, personal life, etc. And when we realize and see what happens to us in that particular instant, we can possibly ensure that our reaction and the process to fix a problem is addressed a lot smoother. And it's not to say that, the people listening to this cannot process situations and so forth. However, but having an awareness of what goes on with us, like physically and emotionally, hopefully maybe it can help tweak things in future or maybe able to pass this on to other people. But you see, when an event occurs, such as, this situation anyway, you're likely going to, like, as humans, we tend to experience emotions, such as fear or sadness and anger and so forth. For example, if you've cut yourself. And this is due to a stress hormone that is released in our bodies. And that helps us physically react, such as, taking flight or fighting, as some of us have heard. So I won't dive into the science side of things though. But the next phase after actually experiencing that emotion are feelings. And the feelings and emotions are actually very different. Feelings is something that actually you experience as a reaction to those emotions. So now, whilst many of us experience the same emotions to events, feelings, on the other hand, is not the case. For example, whilst one person may feel panicked, let's say, from sending the wrong email, another person may feel irritated at themselves. So what I'm trying to get at is we can actually control our feelings. So something happens, our body goes into an emotional response, but the reaction to that response brings on a feeling, and that feeling is what we can control. Now, over the past year, I've gone through quite a few experiences, and many of us do when we're building businesses and so forth. And they've taught me a fair few lessons. And each time I was faced with a situation that looked rather bleak, or, they looked like a massive mountain was, placed in front of me, I slowly began to recognize that those feelings came through after the emotional rush. And I learned, and I'm still learning today, to take a breath and just look at the facts and address what information I needed for me to get back on track. So, admittedly, last Wednesday happened. It challenged me to move into gear quicker than usual. Something might get thrown at me in business, at work, or whatever. But this is a split second situation. However, all I can thank is that every situation that I've been thrown into over the past, my whole life, whatever, it helped me switch quickly and think rationally and move away from the emotions that I was going through. I knew that I could address those emotions a little later on and just get into gear, and the feelings of, anger and so forth. Yeah, they started coming through and everything, but I had to calm myself down. And the crazy thing is, and this is the other flip side to all of this, is whilst everything happened on Wednesday, the situation controlling my emotions into problem solving and everything, Friday, however, was completely different. And instead of going to problem solving, I actually had to go into like thank you speech and calming myself down and sounding like a proper, like a professional person up on stage. So to explain this, in July, I was nominated for an award and I was so grateful. But I truly felt like I wasn't anywhere close to the caliber of, the other women being nominated in this particular award, which was called Women to Watch by B Magazine. And when I found out I was a finalist after that, again, I was still going through this whole imposter syndrome mode. And I was just thankful, first and foremost, of just being nominated in the end. But I did say to hubby, like, let's just go to the gala. It's our first one. It's a good way to meet the people that, I've been chatting to online face to face finally after years of online chats and so forth. So we flew up to Brisbane, we set ourselves up, got all dressed up and all that sort of stuff, ready to have drinks and just chat with the people that were there. And the night started off, it was beautiful. It was just, well organized and everything like that. And, we had listened to some amazing talks from some successful women in business, and the first award was being announced. And, they said, come on, let drum roll, and everyone's hitting the tables and everything. And all of a sudden I hear Nikki Kelly. Well, my husband and I just started laughing, and I literally went into shock. I was like, what the hell is going on? Anyway, my reaction was quite hilarious. But anyway, I had to breathe through my walk up to the stage, and I knew I had to sort of calm myself down and, slow the heartbeat rates down and so forth. But the thing was that it was stressing me out the most was because I didn't prepare for this. I had no idea that this was going to happen. And I knew why I won the award. And I knew that, through my thank you speech, I was possibly going to be, mentioning my daughter, which, tears would start running and everything like that. So I really had to control myself and the feelings that, were going to come into action. So my speech was okay. It was obviously not prepared or anything, as, all the speeches after me were so structured so well. And I was thinking, God, I should have prepared myself. But, so be it. But at least I did calm myself down. I prepared my mind to share the fact of, passing on a message of thanks and sharing my why. But my point is, with all of this, is that sometimes things can happen to us that are crappy or amazing. And it's those moments that test us, that test our ability to react in a rational response. Now, I'm not a psychologist, so, what I say today is more about my experience and how I take moments that happen to me and evaluate them. And each time I do, I can see what I could have done differently, or, what I'd be sure to do again next time. But stepping back and seeing what can be controlled and what can't be controlled does take away the stress. And it just opens up the opportunity for us to move forward a lot easier. So I just hope that the next hurdle or amazing surprise that presents itself to you, you do realize that you've got this. You just simply have to stop a second, breathe, and take charge of those feelings that are coming through. because you can handle the situation, because you are strong. So that's my little message for today. We'll be back next week and starting off with some more interviews again. But I hope you have a wonderful weekend ahead and take care for now. Thanks for listening to the Wise Dome podcast. If you enjoyed and have been inspired by this episode and you'd like to support the podcast, do subscribe and please share it with others. Post about us on social media or leave a rating and review. To catch all the latest from me, Nikki Kelly, you can follow me on Instagram at Wise Dome Podcast, WISEDOME Podcast. I'm Nikki Kelly. Thanks again, and we'll catch up next time.